Sudhamani works in a garment factory, one of the thousands of mostly women working in this sector in Bengaluru. With the partial relaxation of lockdown, work has started again, and it began with vaccination against COVID-19.
ಕೊರೋನಾ ಕೇಸಸ್ ತುಂಬ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಿರೋ ಕಾರಣ ಮತ್ತು ಸಾವು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ತುಂಬ ಭಯ ಇತ್ತು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಬಂದು ನಾನು ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನೇಷನ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
The vaccinations came to Sudhamani and her colleagues right to her workplace. This is part of a massive vaccination drive, a public-private pandemic partnership ahead of the third wave, in a city that was really battered by the second wave. Bustling Bengaluru is India's modern face, the IT and science capital of the country. A medical tourism destination with people from within the country and abroad coming to get world-class treatment in world-class facilities. And then came the COVID-19 pandemic, shutting the city down in extended lockdowns. The first wave came and went, leaving grief in its wake. But the second wave hit even harder, and the city had the most number of active coronavirus cases in the country. The city's medical infrastructure could not cope.
The second wave, what we could see is the incubation period reduced from a week to 15 days to 2 to 3 days. Because of this, the spread happened very fast, like a wildfire. Before you could notice, before you could, even start working in a very big way, we were left out with very little time.
There were not enough ICU beds available. Oxygen supply could not meet the demand, with many hospitals sending out SOSs for oxygen that sometimes did not arrive in time to save a patient. Family members struggled to find medicines prescribed by doctors. Cremation and burial grounds could not cope with the number of deaths in Bengaluru. There were queues and token systems. The wait for funerals could take hours, adding to the trauma of the bereaved. The state government set aside hundreds of acres of land in different parcels around the city for emergency burial grounds. New case numbers in Bengaluru city are coming down, and the hope is that the worst of the second wave is over. But attention is turning to the very probable third wave. And ahead of that, vaccination is definitely considered the best way to make sure the impact of the third wave is less than it could be.
The only way of muting the third wave is by vaccinating as much as we can and as many people as we can. So I think vaccination is going to be extremely crucial in terms of dealing with any potential third wave.
We believe that fully vaccinated people would basically be able to be a bulwark against the spread of the virus, and we would be able to contain the wave sufficiently well if we have good percentage of people vaccinated.
Vaccination is going to be the only and the key strategy that we are going to be having before us to kind of look towards the herd immunity, to look towards gaining control over the changing phase of this pandemic. Now this is going to be very crucial for every state as they reopen to understand and ensure that we are going to have a larger population that is going to get vaccinated to give a sense of movement towards the herd immunity.
Vaccination in Karnataka, as in the rest of the country, has not always been a smooth ride. After vaccines for those over 60 and people with comorbidities, it was extended to those 45 and above. It was when the 18 plus category was added that supply just could not meet the demand.
When earlier we used to go in search of the people to vaccinate. One, because of the second wave, there was a huge surge for the demand there was a big surge in the demand for the vaccine. So that led to a lot of challenges, and even now the numbers, we are trying our best to vaccinate people. The second wave, that was creating a lot of panic for vaccine. So the demand for vaccine was like anything. See, people are willing to do anything. They just wanted to get vaccinated. There was a huge demand among the people who had very good awareness. They wanted to get vaccinated. So normally they were trying to go to any place wherever they used to get vaccine. They used to travel all across the Karnataka, and the people, the local people of that particular locality, they used to feel offended, or they used to feel our vaccine has been taken away somebody else.
It isn't always easy to get vaccinated even now. At this centre in Malleshwaram, people waited for hours for their shots.
ಸೊ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ 8:30ಯಿಂದ ವೆಯ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ನಿನ್ನೆನೂ ಬಂದು ವಾಪಸ್ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಇವತ್ತೂ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆಯಿಂದ 8:30ಯಿಂದ ಕಾಯ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಇವಾಗ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ. ಇನ್ನು ಯಾವಾಗ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. 3 ದಿನದಿಂದ ನಿನ್ನೆನೂ ಬಂದೆ, ಕ್ಯೂವಲ್ಲಿ ನೋ ಸ್ಟಾಕ್ ಅಂತ ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಇವತ್ತೂ ಕಾಯ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
Private players began procuring vaccines directly from the manufacturers to vaccinate the younger population. Now, 25% of doses are set aside for private hospitals. But concerns remain among the smaller hospitals. They want the state and central government to intervene and make sure they get a share of the vaccines.
From 1st of May, government declared that private hospitals should procure the vaccines directly from the manufacturers. From that point of time, we have been trying to approach Serum Institute of India and Bharat Biotech for procuring vaccines as a registered and certified COVID vaccination center to procure vaccines for our industrial area workers who work as floor workers in the factories or as garment workers in the case of mostly women. But as on date, none of the small hospitals, which are 30 to 100 beds, are able to procure vaccines from these manufacturing companies. All the vaccines which are manufactured are being cornered by big corporate hospitals. Hospitals like ours, which take care of factories, industrial laborers and garment workers, are not able to procure even a single dose. This full 25% quota is being procured by big corporate hospitals. None of the small hospitals have got even a single dose.
As the second wave recedes and before the arrival of the third wave, there are plans to massively step up vaccination here in Bengaluru. A target of almost 30 lakh vaccinations at almost 1 lakh vaccinations a day. Here, in one of the BBMP war rooms, the number of vaccinations being given is being closely monitored.
Mainly related with the zonal vaccination programs and all, like especially about the workplace sessions which are going on, and as well as the static teams, that is for the 45 plus age group, healthcare and frontline. 18 to 44 age group, we have categories actually. So there are so many list of categories we conduct for them.
We are working in a vaccination team. Actually, we are collecting reports here, and we have to update all the UPHCs, which vaccination is going on. We will collect the how many vaccinated and how many vials details how we have to collect.
So you have to keep a close track on that. Do you also monitor wastage? Are you able to monitor that?
Yes, we have to monitor wastage also. We have to give count. We have to maintain the data.
We have now covered close to 60% of the people who are 45 plus, at least by one dose, and we are working to see how all people due for the second dose are actively called. Now, as far as the 45 plus is 18 plus is concerned, the 18 plus was opened very recently, and on 1st May. For the first 15-20 days, their supplies were not so regular, and we had to bear with it. But now we are vaccinating close to 90,000 to 1 lakh people a day.
Every single day in Bengaluru city, 1 lakh vaccinations.
Yes. So what we expect is in the next 30 days, we would have close to 25 lakh doses given of vaccinations.
Bengaluru has already vaccinated 3.5 million people. And if you think about Bengaluru's population of roughly eligible population of approximately 10 million, and if you then think about the 3.5 plus another 1.5 who have been infected, then you're talking about trying to vaccinate 5 million people.
Yes.
And even if you vaccinate 80% of the 5 million, which is like say 4 million,
yes, okay,
you should be able to vaccinate yourself to safety.
This massive effort will have a huge role for the private sector.
If you look at the current healthcare system of the country, 80% of the healthcare system has been private and 20% has been public. Now the roles seem to have reversed in vaccination, so there is going to be a lot of pressure on the public health system, and the private sector will definitely contribute equally in whatever capacity possible. However, the procurement wise, you will see that only 25% of the vaccination is given to the private sector. So the next coming days are going to be crucial to understand the evolving dynamics of how this plays out.
And I think Bengaluru can actually show to the rest of the country how effectively the private and sector can work hand in hand with the government to actually vaccinate Bengaluru in a very efficient and rapid way. I think that's the whole objective. I think this is the one city and one, model that we have developed where the private sector, the government, the BBMP is actually coming together to see how collectively we can actually come up with a vaccination model that is based on data, that is based on prioritization based on that data, and how we can actually make sure that the so-called super spreaders or the parts of the population that are spreading the virus can actually quickly be contained by vaccination. Before the government announced the 75-25 split, if you remember, yes, the state government also was supposed to procure 25% yes, of the vaccines. And at that time, we decided that the state government's procurement would be pooled with the private sector's procurement. And the private sector had decided that whilst they were absolutely committed to vaccinating their employees, they also decided that they would start vaccinating communities as well as a philanthropic kind of responsibility. Yes. And therefore, I think what happened was that we had a very nice model which we developed with the BBMP to say that let's pool our vaccines together, and the private sector would help in vaccine deployment, because that also is a cost, that also requires resources, yes, and that also requires camps to be set up. Whenever there is a good partnership between the private sector and the government, things do happen in a very effective way, like we've seen in this city for many, many projects.
This will include public vaccination. We expect about 8 lakhs or so by the government doses. And we also expect a very large role to be played by the private sector. And the private sector is already putting in almost 70% of the doses right now is being done by the private sector. Now we have the best of the names. We have the Manipal, the Fortis, Apollo, Narayan Health, and number of other hospitals who have contracted the doses and who are being supplied the doses. What we have done now is to tie up the apartment complexes with these private hospitals. Yes. So there is a Bangalore Apartments Federation, okay, which is a 930 associations federated body. Okay. And we are in touch with them. They have 11 lakh people that are living in their premises.
Over 1 million people just in the apartments alone.
Yes. And these people are now tied up with hospitals, okay, and that is being taken up at their place itself. Second thing is at the corporates, yeah, at the workplace of the people, they are taking up the vaccinations. So that is with the private hospitals, okay, private enterprise itself. Third thing, obviously the government, we are taking up vulnerable sections, almost 30 categories of them. Yes. And each one of the categories, micro plan is being prepared in consultation with the groups, associations. Yes. Like for example, the film chambers was taken up yesterday. Today we had the sportsmen, the international and national sportsmen. Yesterday we had the transgenders. And then there's another category which we are taking it up with the philanthropic organizations, okay, which are working with us in slums and a number of other garment factory workers, etc. Okay. So we expect that sum total of all this will cover a large sections, and we will be able to cover more than 50% of the adult population in the city of Bangalore in the next 30 days. 2 months later, when they become due for the second dose, then we'll be ready with the second dose as well. You see, 25% of the national allocation goes to the private sector. But we know that because of the capacity to pay and because of the presence of the private healthcare providers, Bangalore as a city will get a substantially higher proportion of the private sector receipt of their vaccines.
The BBMP has been organizing many camps, some with ACT grants, the Action COVID Team grants. This is a non-profit coalition created by the Indian startup ecosystem to fight the pandemic and also to drive change. The camps focus on different sectors of the population to help meet the ambitious target of vaccinating millions over the next month.
We believe that it is much faster to vaccinate people in camps rather than going door to door or expecting people to come through registration processes to hospitals. So I think what we decided was through this effort, we started targeting certain populations that we believe would actually be very either vulnerable or be responsible for spreading the disease.
Yes.
So what we decided was to first vaccinate the construction workers or at Namma Metro, as well as the smart city construction workers. I know that a large number of street hawkers were vaccinated, a large number of people within the transgender population were vaccinated, etc., etc. And we now believe that certain slums also have to be vaccinated rapidly.
This camp was for transgenders in the city.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಫಸ್ಟು ನಮಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಎದುರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇಂಜೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಹಾಕ್ಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕಂತೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಾಂದರೆ ಹಾಸ್ಪಿಟ್ಲ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಕಣ್ಣುಗಳಿಗೆ ಕೆಂಪಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಏನೋ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಎಲ್ಲ ಎದುರಿಸೋರು ಅಕ್ಕಪಕ್ಕ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದರಿಂದ ಭಯ ಪಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರಿ. ಈಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ತುಂಬ ಜನ ಈ ಸಲ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಬಂದಾಗ ತುಂಬ ಜನ ಸತ್ತೋದ್ರು, ಬಡವರು ಶ್ರೀಮಂತರು ಯಾರನ್ನೂ ಬಿಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬರು ತೀರೋದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಮ್ಮಿಂದ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರಿಗೂ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗಬಾರ್ದು, ಬಟ್ ನಾವು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೆಲ್ತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದರೆ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರಿಗೂ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನ್ ಹಾಕ್ಲೇಬೇಕು, ಹಾಕ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೇಬೇಕು, ಅದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದು. ಬಡತನ ಆಗಲಿ ಇರೋರಾಗಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಆಗಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬರು ಆ ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನ್ ಹಾಕ್ಸೋದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದು.
Will all this focus on Bengaluru help the rest of Karnataka? What about vaccine equity for the rural areas?
You know, when there is vaccine inadequacy, Maya, we ought to think about vaccine effectiveness. Okay. Because what we should really be focusing on is how do we stop the spread? And as we know, the bigger towns and cities are the spreaders. Okay. And if you can actually contain the disease and deal with the COVID virus in these towns and cities, you can actually prevent and protect and save the rural centers or rural areas from being infected. Otherwise, what happens is that it is like, spreading yourself too thin and not really getting the objectives that you want. So instead of just giving, and you know that the vaccine deployment is much easier in the well-organized towns and cities rather than in villages. So I think it is, whilst it's very important to vaccinate the villages, I feel the entire reason why the virus is spreading is because of, the fact that, like, for example, Bengaluru is a gateway in terms of travel and travelers, right? And then you have a lot of migrant labor coming to these urban centers for jobs. And so if they are infected and go back to their villages, that's how they spread the disease. So if you vaccinate them, I think you can actually save the rural areas. That to me is equity. How do we save the rural area from infection?
We know that Bangalore is the gateway, and very often any infection that comes in will happen through Bangalore. I believe that if we cover Bangalore and the metro cities, that will be a strong bulwark against the spread of virus at any point of time.
Even after vaccinations, we are reminded that caution is needed, and also needed further studying of the data of post-vaccination infections, the impact of mutations, and the need to possibly update the vaccines themselves.
You see that scientific community across globally are actually understanding this more deeper and deeper, and this needs to be debated on various fronts. Now the current vaccines that have been authorized under the emergency usage. At this juncture, like there are some vaccines which have also been authorized under clinical trial setting. Now it is very, very important to keep a close monitoring on the real-time data using the CoWIN app, using the eWIN portal, and using the Arogya Setu to have an integrated data and understand the real-time dynamics. And this is very crucial because there are several epidemiologists, virologists who have been talking about vaccine escape mutations or even vaccine induced related mutations of new variants coming up, the variants of concern. If you look at global patterns today, nearly every 3 months we are seeing one big wave happening because of a new variant of concern. So considering that fact, there are companies like Pfizer now that have gone back to the drawing board to reimagine the new strain and prepare the new vaccines for that. Is that going to be something that we are going to look for the near future? Will we require a new booster or will we require a new vaccine? Are questions that are still unanswered.
And while many questions do remain over these vaccines, which were developed in such a short time and authorized for emergency use, with their impact and efficacy still being understood, they are the best weapon we have against the third wave.
ಇವಾಗ ಒಂದು ಖುಷಿಯಾಗಿದೆ ಸರ್, ನನಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕೊರೋನಾ ಬಂದರೆ ನಾನು ಗೆದ್ದು ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸಿದೆ.
The number of people who need their COVID-19 vaccinations in Bengaluru and across India is enormous. And the logistical challenges can sometimes seem overwhelming. That long queue outside leads to the registration counters here and onto this side where vaccinations are actually happening. But those who are working together on this project believe that they can get that all-important vaccine into the arms of enough people ahead of the third wave. It really is a race against time. With Govind Murthy and DM Kumar, Maya Sharma in Bengaluru for NDTV.